Captain Marcus Chun had seen enough alien worlds to know when he was walking into trouble. The crystalline spires of Nexari Prime stretched toward twin suns like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the harsh desert light in painful rainbows. His boots crunched on the sandy path leading to the royal palace, each step taking him further from his crashed ship and deeper into what could very well be his final mission. 3 days ago, the UEF Darwin had been conducting a routine diplomatic survey near the Nexari system when everything went sideways. A massive electromagnetic storm had torn through their navigation systems, sending them careening toward the planet's surface. Marcus had managed to pilot the ship through the worst of it, but not without casualties. Half his crew was dead, the other half scattered across the desert when the ship broke apart on impact. The Nexari were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors with little patience for outsiders. Their queen, Zura Lin, ruled with an iron fist and had reportedly never allowed a human to leave her world alive. The Galactic Council had tried diplomatic contact 17 times over the past decade. 17 times, their ambassadors had simply vanished. Marcus adjusted the translator device, clipped to his uniform collar, and checked his sidearm one last time. Not that it would do much good against the Nexari military, but old habits died hard. The path ahead curved around a massive crystal formation, and suddenly, the palace gates came into view. They were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Carved from a single piece of black stone that seemed to absorb light, the gates stood nearly 50 feet tall. Geometric patterns covered every inch, telling stories of ancient battles and conquered worlds. 2 guards flanked the entrance, their bodies encased in form-fitting armor that seemed to grow from their skin rather than being worn over it. The Nexari were humanoid in basic structure, but that was where the similarities ended. They stood nearly 8 feet tall on average, with elongated limbs and fingers that ended in retractable claws. Their skin ranged from deep purple to midnight blue, and their eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of intelligence and danger. Most unsettling of all were the crystalline growths that emerged from their skulls and shoulders, forming natural armor that was harder than steel. As Marcus approached, both guards turned toward him with fluid precision. Their weapons were unlike anything in the human arsenal. Long staffs that crackled with energy, connected to their armor through organic-looking conduits. The air around them shimmered with heat distortion, suggesting the weapons were already charging. "I am Captain Marcus Chun of the United Earth Federation," he called out, raising his hands to show he meant no immediate threat. "I request an audience with Queen Zura Lin under the Galactic Accord for distressed spacefarer assistance." The guards exchanged glances, their crystalline growths pulsing with a soft blue light that Marcus had learned indicated surprise or confusion. One of them spoke in the clicking, musical language of the Nexari, and Marcus's translator worked overtime to process the meaning. "The human thinks the queen will see him." Amusing. The guard's tone dripped with contempt. "Tell me, soft flesh, how many of your kind have we welcomed as guests?" Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm aware of your world's reputation. I'm also aware that I have information about a threat that affects not just humans, but all sentient species in this sector, including the Nexari." This was a gamble. During their survey mission, the Darwin had detected unusual energy signatures near the edge of Nexari space. The readings suggested something massive and artificial, potentially a weapon or invasion force. Marcus had no proof it was hostile, but given the circumstances, he needed every advantage he could get. The second guard leaned forward, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You speak of threats to the mighty Nexari? We who have conquered 12-star systems and brought low the pride of empires." "I speak of the Devourers," Marcus said quietly. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Both guards stepped back as if struck, their weapons lowering slightly. The crystalline growths on their bodies flared from blue to bright red, then settled into a nervous orange glow. For a moment, the only sound was the whistle of wind through the crystal formations. The Devourers were a legend throughout the galaxy, an ancient race of machines that had supposedly consumed entire worlds before vanishing into deep space millions of years ago. Most civilizations considered them mythology, stories told to frighten children. But Marcus had seen the energy signatures, had watched his ship's sensors track something vast and purposeful moving through the void. Whether it was the Devourers or something equally dangerous, the threat was real. "Wait here," the first guard commanded, though his voice had lost much of its earlier arrogance. "Do not move. Do not speak. Do not so much as breathe loudly, or we will turn you to ash where you stand." Marcus nodded and settled into a comfortable waiting position. Military training had taught him patience, and he'd need all of it here. The remaining guard watched him with unblinking eyes, weapons still at the ready. Minutes stretched into an hour, then two. The twin suns moved across the sky, casting shifting shadows through the crystal formations. Finally, the massive gates began to grind open. The returning guard emerged, followed by what could only be members of the royal court. They were even more impressive than the gate guards. Their armor was clearly ceremonial, inlaid with precious stones and metals that caught the light like captured stars. Their crystalline growths were more elaborate, forming crown-like structures that spoke of rank and status. "The Queen has agreed to see you," the lead courtier announced. "You will be searched, bound, and escorted under heavy guard. Any sudden movements will result in immediate execution. Any attempt to deceive or threaten our Queen will result in slow execution. Any disrespect shown to the royal presence will result in extremely slow execution. Do you understand these terms, human?" "I understand," Marcus replied. "I accept your conditions." The search was thorough and invasive. They confiscated his sidearm, his emergency beacon, his survival knife, and even his water purification tablets. Apparently, anything that could conceivably be used as a weapon or tool was considered contraband. They bound his hands with restraints that felt like living metal, adjusting their grip automatically to prevent escape without cutting off circulation. The escort formation was impressive in its precision. 2 guards ahead, 2 behind, 1 on each side, and the courtier leading the procession. Each guard carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy, and Marcus could feel the heat radiating from their armor. They moved through corridors that seemed carved from solid crystal, passing murals that depicted the glory of Nexary civilization. The throne room was a masterpiece of alien architecture. The ceiling soared at least 200 feet overhead, supported by columns that twisted like frozen tornadoes. Every surface was covered in the same geometric patterns Marcus had seen on the gates, but here they seemed to move and shift in the corner of his vision. Bioluminescent crystals provided soft lighting that made everything glow with an otherworldly beauty. And there, at the far end of the massive chamber, sat Queen Zuralyn on a throne carved from a single enormous crystal. She was magnificent and terrifying. Even seated, she towered over her guards, easily 9 feet tall with the regal bearing of someone born to command. Her skin was the deep purple of a royal bloodline, and her crystalline crown formed elaborate spires that caught and reflected light like a living constellation. Her eyes blazed with intelligence and barely controlled fury, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of absolute power. "So," she said, her words echoing through the chamber, "a human dares to enter my domain and speak of ancient myths. Tell me, Captain Marcus Chun of the United Earth Federation, why should I not have you flayed alive for the entertainment of my court?" Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. "Because, Your Majesty, the myths are real, and they're coming for all of us." The Queen leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable. "Explain." 3 days ago, my ship detected massive energy signatures on the edge of your territory. The readings match theoretical models for devourer technology, planet-killing machines that harvest entire worlds for raw materials. Based on their trajectory and speed, I estimate they'll reach Nexary Prime in approximately 14 solar cycles. A murmur ran through the assembled court. Some of the guards shifted nervously, their crystalline growths flickering with uncertain colors. But the queen remained still as stone, her burning gaze fixed on Marcus. "And why," she asked softly, "should I believe the word of a human? Your species is known for deception and weakness. You could be lying to save your own pathetic life." Marcus nodded. "You're right to be suspicious, but I have data recordings from my ship sensors. More importantly, I have a proposal that could benefit both our species." "Speak your proposal, human." "The Nexari are renowned as warriors, but even the mightiest army needs intelligence about their enemy. My people have spent centuries studying theoretical models of devourer technology. We know their likely attack patterns, their weaknesses, their tactical preferences. In exchange for safe passage off your world, I'll share everything we know." The queen was silent for a long moment, her eyes seeming to look right through him. When she finally spoke, her voice was like ice. "Your proposal assumes several things, human. First, that I believe your warnings. Second, that I need your assistance to defend my world. Third, that I would allow any human to leave Nexari Prom alive, regardless of the service they might provide." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. "Your Majesty, I understand." "No." The queen cut him off, rising from her throne with fluid grace. "You do not understand. You come to my world uninvited. You crash your primitive ship on my sacred ground. You kill my people's sacred sand serpents while stumbling through the desert. And then you dare to suggest that the mighty Nexari need the help of humans to defend themselves." The guard around the throne room began moving closer, their weapons charging with ominous sounds. Marcus realized with growing horror that he'd misread the situation completely. The queen wasn't interested in his warnings or his data. She saw his presence as an insult that demanded swift retribution. "Guards," Queen Zerlin commanded, her voice ringing with authority, "prepare this human for interrogation. I want to know everything about his ship, his mission, and what other humans might be coming to violate our territory. When we have learned all we can, he will provide entertainment for the evening feast." The guards stepped forward, their weapons fully charged now. Energy crackled between the focusing crystals at the tips of their staffs, and Marcus could feel his skin tingling from the electromagnetic fields. This was it, the end of his diplomatic mission, and probably his life. But then something unexpected happened. A door at the side of the throne room burst open, and two young Nexari rushed in. They were smaller than the adults, their crystalline growths still developing, their movements quick and uncertain. Children, Marcus realized. The queen's daughters. They ran straight toward their mother, clearly upset about something. Behind them came a frazzled-looking adult Nexari, who was obviously their tutor or guardian. "Mother," the older child called out. "The sand gardens are burning." The sky fire came down, and she stopped mid-sentence as she noticed the human standing in the center of the throne room, surrounded by guards with weapons aimed at his head. Her younger sister nearly collided with her as they both stared at Marcus with undisguised curiosity. But something strange happened in that moment of frozen tableau. The younger daughter, who couldn't have been more than the equivalent of 6 human years old, suddenly smiled and ran toward Marcus instead of away from him. "Pretty sky friend," she exclaimed in the musical language of children everywhere, her crystalline growths glowing with the bright gold of pure joy. Every guard in the room tensed. Weapons swiveled toward the child, then toward Marcus, then back again as the soldiers struggled with conflicting instincts. The queen's expression shifted from cold fury to something approaching panic. "Kalawaya, no," she commanded. "Come away from a human." But the child had already reached Marcus, her small hands grabbing onto the restraints around his wrists as she looked up at him with wonder. Her sister followed more cautiously, staying just within reach, but clearly fascinated by their unexpected visitor. And in that moment, with 2 alien children looking up at him with trust and curiosity instead of fear, Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about the Nexari might be wrong. The queen's fury hadn't disappeared, but there was something else there now, a mother's protective instinct that transcended species boundaries. "Please," he said quietly, speaking directly to the Queen while the children examined his strange human features with scientific fascination. "I'm not your enemy, and neither are my people, but there's something out there that threatens all of us, and we need to work together if any of us are going to survive what's coming." The Queen stood frozen, her hand half raised to command her guards to fire. Her daughters were between her and the human now, and for the first time since Marcus had entered the throne room, Queen Zoralyn looked uncertain. The throne room remained locked in deadly silence. Queen Zoralyn's burning eyes moved between Marcus and her daughters, who had positioned themselves directly in the line of fire. The younger child, Kalawayan, was now tracing the strange patterns on Marcus's uniform with one small finger, completely oblivious to the dozen energy weapons aimed in her general direction. "Fascinating," the older daughter whispered, her crystalline growths flickering with the pale blue of intense curiosity. "Mother, his skin is so soft. And look, no crystal armor at all. How does he survive without proper protection?" Marcus remained perfectly still, acutely aware that any sudden movement could trigger a massacre. The guards' weapons hummed with increasing intensity, their targeting systems confused by the presence of the royal children in their firing solutions. "Valera," the Queen said carefully, her voice strained with the effort of maintaining control. "Gun, step away from the human immediately. He is dangerous." "But, Mother," Kalawayan protested, her young voice carrying the universal tone of a child who discovered something wonderful. "He saved the crystal flowers." Every adult in the throne room froze. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat as he suddenly understood what the child was referring to. During his desperate trek across the desert, he'd stumbled upon a grove of the sacred crystal flowers that were revered throughout Nexari culture. They were dying, their bioluminescent cores flickering weakly as some kind of blight consumed them from within. Marcus had studied xenobotany as part of his diplomatic training, and he'd recognized the symptoms of mineral poisoning. Using supplies from his emergency kit, he'd managed to neutralize the contamination and restore the flower's natural luminescence. He'd thought nothing of it at the time, just another small act of conservation that his training had made automatic. But to the Nexari, those flowers were sacred. They were living symbols of their connection to their homeworld, and their health was considered a direct reflection of the planet's spiritual well-being. "Impossible," one of the court members whispered. "No outsider knows the healing songs of the crystal flowers." "He didn't sing," Valera said matter-of-factly. "He used strange magic tools. But the flowers responded anyway. They're glowing brighter than they have in cycles." Queen Zoralyn's expression shifted subtly. The murderous fury was still there, but now was mixed with something else, confusion, perhaps even a grudging respect. She gestured sharply, and the guards lowered their weapons slightly, though they remained at the ready. "Guards, maintain your positions, but do not fire unless I give explicit orders," she commanded. Then, addressing Marcus directly for the first time without open hostility, "Human, explain how you healed the sacred grove." Marcus chose his words carefully. "Your Majesty, I have training in xenobiology and ecological restoration. When I saw the flowers were suffering from mineral contamination in their root systems, I used a chemical neutralizing agent to restore the proper balance. I meant no disrespect. I simply couldn't stand by and watch living things suffer when I had the knowledge to help." The Queen descended from her throne with deliberate grace, each step echoing through the chamber. Her daughters moved aside, but remained close to Marcus, their crystalline growths now glowing with protective amber, a color Marcus had learned indicated fierce loyalty. "You speak of helping living things," the Queen said, stopping just beyond arm's reach. "Yet your species wages war across the galaxy. You conquer and consume just as readily as any predator." "Some humans do," Marcus admitted, "just as some Nexari have conquered other worlds. But many of us believe in something different. We believe in cooperation, in learning from other species, in building something greater than any one civilization could achieve alone. Kalawayan tugged on her mother's robes. Mother, when the sky fire fell, he could have hidden in the safe caves. The tutor says the caves are where smart people go when danger comes. But he came here instead to warn us about the Shadow Eaters. The queen's eyes flashed. What do you know of the Devourers, child? The old stories say they eat whole worlds. Valera answered with the seriousness that only children could bring to ancient mythology. They turn planets into metal and energy, then move on to eat more worlds. But the stories also say they've been sleeping in the dark between stars. Until now, Marcus said quietly, Your Majesty, I've seen the sensor data. Something massive is moving through space toward this sector. Whether it's the actual Devourers or something equally dangerous, we need to be prepared. The Queen studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she turned to address her court. Clear the throne room. All of you. Guards, remain posted outside, but do not enter unless I call for you. The courtiers filed out with obvious reluctance, clearly unhappy about leaving their queen alone with an alien. The guards took positions just outside the massive doors, their weapons still visible through the crystalline panels. When they were alone, except for her daughters, Queen Zerlin's posture changed subtly. The royal mask remained, but some of the rigid formality dissolved. Tell me about these sensor readings, she said. Marcus described everything. The electromagnetic storm that had damaged his ship, the massive energy signatures his sensors had detected, the trajectory calculations that suggested an arrival at Nexury Prime within 2 weeks. As he spoke, he noticed the Queen's crystalline crown beginning to pulse with a slow, steady rhythm that suggested deep thought. Show me, she said finally. I'm afraid the data is stored in my ship's computer core. What's left of my ship, anyway? It's scattered across about 50 square kilometers of desert. That can be retrieved, the Queen said dismissively. But first, I need to understand something else. Why did you really come here, human? And do not give me platitudes about diplomacy and cooperation. I want the truth. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Everything hinged on what he said next. The Queen was offering him a chance to speak honestly, probably the only chance he'd get. Because we're running out of time, he said. All of us. Humans, Nexury, every species in the galaxy. I've studied the historical records, the archaeological evidence, the theoretical projections. Something eliminated the precursors, a race so advanced they could reshape entire star systems. If the Devourers or something like them destroyed a civilization that powerful, what chance do any of us have alone? The Queen's daughters had settled on the steps leading to the throne, listening with the intensity that children reserved for really good stories. But Marcus could see in their eyes that they understood more than most adults would give them credit for. The humans have a saying, Marcus continued. United we stand, divided we fall. I came here because the Nexury are some of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Your military technology, combined with human scientific knowledge and the resources of the other allied species, together, we might have a chance. And if I refuse, the Queen asked, if I decide that the Nexury will face this threat alone, as we have faced all others, Marcus met her burning gaze steadily. Then, I'll ask you to at least let me send a warning to my people before your world is destroyed. They deserve the chance to prepare, even if they can't save themselves. The blunt honesty of his answer seemed to surprise her. For a moment, the Queen's royal composure slipped entirely, revealing something almost vulnerable underneath. You truly believe your warnings, don't you? This isn't some elaborate deception to gain access to our technology or military secrets. Your Majesty, if I wanted your secrets, there are easier ways to go about it than crashing my ship in your desert and walking up to your front door. I could have sent spy drones or attempted infiltration or any number of covert operations. Instead, I'm standing here in restraints, surrounded by guards who would love nothing more than to disintegrate me, telling you about a threat that I pray I'm wrong about. Kalawayan spoke up from her perch on the steps. Mother, The crystal flowers know when someone has a good heart. They only sing for people who help instead of hurting. The flowers don't sing, dear one, her mother said gently. They do, the child insisted. You just have to listen with your crystal sense instead of your ear sense. And when the sky friend helped them, they sang the most beautiful song about healing and hope and growing strong together. Belada nuda sariusli. I heard it too, Mother. The harmony was unlike anything in the teaching songs. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Nexary children were describing something that human science couldn't explain, some kind of psychic or empathic connection with their planet's ecosystem. If they were telling the truth, if the sacred flowers had somehow sensed his intentions and approved of them, the queen closed her eyes and was silent for several minutes. Her crystalline crown pulsed faster now, and Marcus could see faint energy patterns dancing beneath her skin. Whatever decision-making process she was going through, it was clearly complex and deeply personal. Finally, she opened her eyes and looked directly at him. I will examine your data personally. If your warnings prove credible, we will discuss terms for cooperation. But understand this, human, any deception, any attempt to manipulate or exploit my people's trust will result in consequences beyond your ability to imagine. Understand, your majesty. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove the truth. The queen gestured, and the restraints around Marcus's wrists dissolved like mist. He rubbed his hands, working circulation back into his fingers while trying not to show how relieved he was. You will be assigned quarters in the guest wing, the queen continued. You will be escorted at all times. You will not be permitted to leave the palace grounds. Guards will be posted outside your door, and any attempt to escape will be considered an act of war against the Nexary Empire. Understood. There's more. My daughters seem to have taken an interest in you. For reasons I cannot begin to fathom, they appear to trust you. I will allow them to visit you under supervision, partly because their happiness matters to me, and partly because children often see truths that adults miss. Marcus bowed slightly. I'm honored by their trust, and I won't betray it. Kalawayan clapped her hands together, her crystalline growths flaring with joy. Can we show him the memory gardens, Mother? And the singing pools? And the place where the star maps live? We shall see, little one. For now, the human needs rest and food. And I need to examine his claims about these devourers. As if summoned by thought alone, the throne room doors opened to admit an escort of guards. But these weren't the same warriors who had surrounded Marcus earlier. These guards wore different armor, still formidable, but designed more for protection than intimidation. Their weapons remained sheathed, and their crystalline growths glowed with a neutral white that indicated professional duty rather than personal hostility. Captain Chun will be housed in the honored guest quarters, the queen announced. He is to be treated with respect befitting a diplomatic visitor, but he is not to be given access to any restricted areas without my personal authorization. The lead guard bowed deeply. It shall be as you command, your majesty. As the escort formed around him, Marcus turned back to the queen. Your majesty, there's one more thing you should know. I'm not the only human in your territory. My crew scattered when our ship broke apart. Some of them might still be alive, trying to survive in the desert. The queen's expression hardened. How many? 15, not counting myself. They're good people, your majesty. Scientists and explorers, not soldiers. If your patrols find them, they will be brought here alive and unharmed, the queen said after a moment's consideration. If your warnings prove true, we may have need of every trained mind available. And if they prove false, she left the threat unfinished. Thank you, your majesty. As Marcus was escorted from the throne room, he caught one last glimpse of the royal family. Queen Zaralyn had returned to her throne, but she was no longer the terrifying figure of absolute authority he'd first encountered. She was a mother worried about her children's future, a ruler facing impossible decisions, and perhaps, just perhaps, an ally in the struggle to come. The honored guest quarters turned out to be a suite of rooms that would have been impressive in any human palace. The walls were carved from the same crystalline material as the rest of the palace, but here the patterns were softer, more flowing. Bioluminescent panels provided gentle lighting that automatically adjusted to comfortable levels. The furniture was clearly designed for Nexary physiology, but adjustable platforms had been provided that brought everything to human comfortable heights. A wall-mounted screen displayed views of the palace gardens, where alien flowers bloomed in patterns that seemed almost musical in their complexity. "Your evening meal will be brought shortly," the guard captain informed him. The kitchen staff have been instructed to prepare food suitable for human consumption. If you have any special requirements or restrictions, inform the servants, and they will accommodate you. "Thank you. And Captain, what should I call you?" The guard's crystalline growths flickered with what might have been amusement. "I am Warsinger Thaneval. In your language, that would translate roughly to Senior Guard Captain. You may use either form of address." "Warsinger Thaneval, I'm curious about something. Your people are called some of the finest warriors in the galaxy, yet you show remarkable consideration for a potential enemy. Is this typical Nexary behavior?" Thaneval was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "The Queen's daughter spoke for you, human. In our culture, children are considered closer to the planet's spirit than adults. When a child declares someone trustworthy, we listen. It does not mean we stop being cautious, but we listen." After the guards had taken their positions outside his door, Marcus found himself alone for the first time since the crash. He moved to the window and looked out over the alien landscape, watching the twin suns set behind the crystalline spires of the city. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the system, something vast and hungry was moving through the void. Whether it was the legendary Devourers or some new threat entirely, it was coming. And now, against all odds, he might have found allies powerful enough to stand against it. The question was whether they had enough time to prepare for what was coming. The morning light filtering through his crystalline windows woke Marcus from the deepest sleep he'd had since the crash. The guest quarters had somehow adjusted their internal atmosphere to match human preferences, and he felt more rested than he had any right to expect given the circumstances. A soft chime announced the arrival of his breakfast. The door opened to admit a young Nexary servant carrying a tray of foods that looked both alien and appetizing. Behind the servant came an unexpected visitor, Princess Valera, the older of the Queen's daughters. "Good morning, Captain Shun," she said with the careful formality of a child practicing adult manners. "Mother has assigned me to be your cultural liaison during your stay. I am to help you understand our customs and answer any questions you might have about Nexary society." Marcus bowed slightly, matching her formal tone. "I'm honored by the assignment, Princess. Though I have to ask, aren't you a bit young for diplomatic duty?" Valera's crystalline growths flickered with indignation. "I am nearly 12 cycles old, which makes me practically an adult. Besides, I've studied all the major galactic languages and customs. My tutors say I have an exceptional aptitude for cross-cultural communication." The servant finished arranging the breakfast and withdrew with a bow. Marcus examined the meal with interest. It appeared to consist of various fruits, grains, and what might have been some kind of protein paste, all arranged in pleasing geometric patterns. "Your mother mentioned examining my ship's data," Marcus said, taking an experimental bite of something that tasted remarkably like Earth strawberries. "Do you know when that might happen?" "This morning," Valera said, settling onto one of the adjustable chairs with practiced ease. "A recovery team was dispatched at dawn to locate and retrieve the computer core from your vessel. Mother wants to review the information personally before making any decisions about your warnings." Marcus nodded, then paused as something occurred to him. "Princess, yesterday your sister mentioned something about hearing the crystal flowers sing. What exactly did she mean by that?" Valera's expression became more serious. "Kalawayan has very strong crystal sense, what you might call psychic abilities. All Nexary can feel the emotional resonance of our world's living crystals, but she's unusually sensitive. When she says the flowers sang for you, she means they recognize something good in your intentions. And you? Do you have crystal sense as well? Some, Valera admitted. Not as much as my sister, but enough to know that you're genuinely frightened about something you believe is coming to destroy us all. The fear taste in your thoughts is very strong, but it's not fear for yourself. It's fear for everyone. Marcus set down his eating utensil, struck by the casual way she described reading his emotions. Princess, I need to ask you something, and I want you to give me an honest answer. Do you believe your people are in danger? Valera was quiet for several minutes. Her young face creased with concentration. Finally, she spoke in a voice that sounded far older than her years. I've been studying the old records, the ones from before we became a starfaring civilization. Our ancestors spoke of the sky devourers, machines that fell from the void and consumed everything in their path. Most scholars say they were just myths, stories created to explain natural disasters. She paused, her crystalline growths pulsing with nervous energy. But some of the descriptions are very specific. They mention energy signatures, attack patterns, even the sound the machines made as they worked. Too specific to be mythology. What do the current scholars say about that? They say the ancient Nexari had good imaginations, Valera said with a bitter tone that surprised Marcus. They refused to consider that the stories might be based on actual encounters. Before Marcus could respond, the door chimed again. This time it admitted war singer Thainval, who bowed to the princess before addressing Marcus. Captain Chun, Her Majesty requests your immediate presence in the strategic planning chamber. We have retrieved your computer core and require your assistance in interpreting the data. Marcus stood quickly. Of course. Princess, thank you for breakfast and the conversation. It's been enlightening. I'll come with you, Valera announced. Mother said I should observe all diplomatic proceedings as part of my education. The strategic planning chamber was unlike anything Marcus had seen in the palace so far. Where other rooms emphasized beauty and artistry, this space was purely functional. The walls were covered with displays showing tactical information, star charts, and what looked like real-time feeds from patrol ships throughout the system. Queen Zerlin stood at the center of all, her attention focused on a holographic display that showed the recovered data from Marcus's ship. Several high-ranking military officers surrounded her, their armor bearing the elaborate crystalline decorations that indicated senior rank. Captain Chun, the Queen said without looking away from the display. Your computer core was severely damaged in the crash, but our technicians have managed to recover most of the sensor data. What we found is troubling. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of local space. Marcus could see several star systems, shipping lanes, and the patrol routes of both human and Nexari vessels. But there at the edge of the display was something that made his blood run cold. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and it was moving with obvious purpose toward the inhabited systems. The energy signature was unlike anything in the databases of either species, and the readings suggested technology far beyond current galactic civilization. Your sensors detected this object 3 days ago, one of the military officers said. Based on its current trajectory and velocity, it will reach the outer edge of our system in approximately 11 standard days. Queen Zerlin finally turned to face Marcus. We've transmitted the data to our deep space monitoring stations and contacted our allies in the neighboring systems. None of them show any similar objects, which suggests this is either a single, massive vessel or the vanguard of a larger force. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I think it's important to note that my ship's sensors weren't designed to detect cloaked or stealth vessels. If there are more objects like this one, we might not see them until they're much closer. The Queen's expression darkened. Explain. The Devourer legends describe them as using advanced camouflage technology. They could move entire fleets through space undetected until they were ready to attack. If this is really one of their vessels, it might be deliberately showing itself to gauge our response. A probe, one of the officers said grimly, to test our defenses and response times. That would be my assessment, yes. Queen Zerlin moved to a different display, this one showing the current disposition of the Nexary fleet. Marcus was impressed despite himself. The Nexary had over 300 warships of various classes, including several massive dreadnoughts that could probably take on an entire human battle group. "We have sent word to our subject worlds," the Queen announced. "Within 6 days, we will have a fleet of over 400 ships assembled in this system. Combined with our planetary defense networks, we should be able to present a formidable challenge to any attacker. Your Majesty, that's an impressive force by current galactic standards. But, according to the theoretical models my people have developed, a single Devourer vessel might be capable of engaging dozens of modern warships simultaneously." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, one of the younger officers spoke up. "What do you suggest, human? That we flee our homeworld and abandon everything our people have built?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "I suggest we pool our resources with every available ally and present a unified defense. The human fleet isn't as large as yours, but our technology is different. Our weapons and shields might be effective against threats that your technology can't handle, and vice versa." "You're talking about a full military alliance," another officer said. "That would require command integration, shared tactical networks, coordinated battle plans," Marcus finished. "I know it's unprecedented. I know it goes against every tradition of independent sovereignty. But precedent and tradition won't matter if we're all dead." Princess Valera had been quietly following the conversation, but now she stepped forward. "Mother, what about the Confederation worlds? And the Zephyrian Trade Union? If this threat is as large as Captain Shin suggests, shouldn't we warn them as well?" The Queen looked at her daughter with surprise. "You think we should reach out to civilizations we've been at war with for decades?" "I think," Valera said with startling maturity, "that ancient enemies become irrelevant when faced with extinction." Marcus felt a surge of hope. If a 12-year-old Nexary princess could understand the necessity of cooperation, maybe there was a chance the adults could see it too. "Your Majesty," he said, "I'd like to propose something. Give me access to your communication systems, and I'll contact the Human Fleet Command. If you're willing to consider an alliance, I can have our ships here within 5 days. That would give us time to integrate our forces and develop coordinated defense strategies before the object arrives." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "And what assurance do I have that this isn't an elaborate human plot to gain access to our military capabilities?" Because Marcus said simply, "If I wanted to harm your people, I wouldn't have saved your sacred flowers. I wouldn't have come here openly to warn you about a threat. And I certainly wouldn't have put myself at the mercy of your guards and the justice system." One of the senior officers leaned forward. "Your Majesty, our intelligence networks have confirmed that human ships are indeed being recalled to their core systems. Either they're preparing for this same threat, or they're planning some kind of massive military action." "Which would you consider more likely?" the Queen asked Marcus. "Preparation for the threat, Your Majesty. My people aren't perfect, but we're not stupid. If we were planning an invasion of Nexary space, we'd do it when your fleets were dispersed, not when you're assembling the largest military force in your history." The Queen moved to the Central Command console and began entering commands. The displays around the room shifted to show communication networks spanning multiple star systems. "I'm going to do something that no Nexary ruler has done in over 2 centuries, she announced. "I'm going to contact every major civilization in this sector and propose a defensive alliance against an existential threat." The officers in the room exchanged glances, some supportive, others clearly disturbed by the unprecedented nature of the decision. "Your Majesty," one of the senior commanders said carefully, "the political ramifications of this decision could be enormous. If the threat proves to be less than described, our enemies will see this as a sign of weakness." "Commander Torvin," the Queen replied sharply, "if the threat is as described, we won't have enemies because we'll all be dead. I would rather face political embarrassment than planetary extinction." She turned to Marcus. "Captain Shun, you will work with my communication staff to contact your fleet command. You will also assist in developing the technical specifications needed for integrating human and Nexary military systems. Princess Valera will continue to serve as your liaison. Thank you, Your Majesty. I won't let you down. See that you don't. Because if this alliance fails, if your people prove treacherous, if this entire situation is some elaborate deception, the consequences will extend far beyond just you. They will poison relations between our species for generations. As the meeting broke up and the various officers dispersed to their duties, Marcus found himself standing alone with the Queen and her daughter. The holographic displays continued their silent dance of tactical information, but the weight of what they were attempting seemed to press down on everyone. "Mother," Valera said quietly, "do you think the other civilizations will agree to the alliance?" The Queen looked at her daughter with an expression that mixed pride and sorrow. "I honestly don't know, dear one. Fear makes some people wise and others foolish. We'll discover which category our neighbors fall into. And if they refuse?" Marcus asked. "Then we'll face this threat with whatever forces we can muster and pray to the crystal spirits that it's enough." Marcus looked out through the chamber's transparent walls at the alien city beyond. Millions of lives depended on the decisions being made in this room. Millions more across dozens of worlds throughout the sector. The weight of that responsibility was almost crushing. But there was something else, too. For the first time since the crash, he felt hope. Not because the situation was good, it was still potentially catastrophic, but because they were finally taking action. They were building something unprecedented, a true interspecies alliance based on mutual survival rather than conquest or domination. It might not be enough to save them all, but it was a beginning. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity that would have been unimaginable just days before. The Palace Communications Center had been transformed into the nerve center of the most ambitious diplomatic initiative in galactic history. Representatives from 11 different civilizations worked around the clock to hammer out the framework for an unprecedented alliance. Marcus stood before the main tactical display, studying the growing constellation of allied forces converging on the Nexary system. The human Third Fleet had arrived first, 47 ships, including the massive carrier UES Prometheus. The Zephyrian Trade Union had committed their entire defensive fleet, another 30 vessels with some of the most advanced shield technology in the galaxy. Even the reclusive Void Walkers had emerged from their hidden stations to contribute a dozen of their mysterious phase ships. "Captain Chun," came a familiar voice behind him. He turned to see Queen Zuralin approaching, flanked by her daughters and several of her senior advisors. The Queen looked exhausted. The strain of organizing this alliance while preparing for battle was taking its toll, but her resolve remained unshaken. "Your Majesty," Marcus said with a respectful bow, "the latest tactical assessments are ready for your review." "Before we address military matters," the Queen said, "I have something else to discuss with you. My intelligence services have been investigating your claims about the Devourers. What they've discovered is illuminating." She gestured to one of her advisors, who activated a new display. This one showed archaeological data from dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy, excavation sites, artifact analyses, and historical records stretching back millions of years. "We contacted every major archaeological institute in the known galaxy," the advisor explained. "What we found was a pattern that had never been recognized before, because no one had ever looked at all the data simultaneously." The display shifted to show a timeline stretching back 3 million years. At regular intervals, the timeline showed evidence of massive technological civilizations suddenly vanishing without trace. "Every 700,000 years, approximately," the Queen said quietly, "a galaxy-spanning civilization reaches the peak of its development. And then, within the span of a few decades, all evidence of their existence ends. No gradual decline, no evidence of warfare or plague or natural disaster. They simply stop." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. How many times? 4 confirmed extinction events, possibly 5. Each one represents the complete elimination of species that had achieved interstellar travel, energy manipulation on a stellar scale, and technological capabilities far beyond our current level. Princess Valera stepped forward, her young face pale but determined. Captain Chun, I've been studying the pattern intervals. If the timeline is accurate, we're currently in the window when the next extinction event should occur. That object on our sensors, Marcus said slowly, it's not just a devourer's ship. It's the return of the harvest cycle. The Queen nodded grimly. That is our assessment as well, which means this threat isn't limited to our sector. Eventually, it will encompass every inhabited world in the galaxy. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. The tactical displays flashed red as incoming data streamed in from the deep space monitoring stations. Your Majesty, Warsinger Thainval announced as he rushed into the chamber, we have multiple contacts on the edge of the system. The object we've been tracking, it's not alone. The main display shifted to show the outer system, and Marcus felt his heart sink. Where before there had been a single massive contact, now there were dozens. The objects were decloaking in perfect formation, revealing a fleet that dwarfed anything in recorded galactic history. How many? The Queen asked, her voice deadly calm. 137 confirmed contacts came to reply from the sensor station, ranging in size from frigate class to something that's larger than our space stations. Time to arrival? At current velocity, approximately 18 hours. Marcus studied the formation on the display, noting the precise spacing and coordinated movement patterns. Your Majesty, this is definitely Devourer technology. Look at the way they're organized. It's not a military formation designed to fight other ships. It's an industrial operation designed to systematically process everything in their path. Queen Zaralyn activated the galaxy-wide communications network. Her image appeared on screens throughout the Allied fleets, in government chambers across dozens of worlds, in the homes of billions of civilians who were about to learn that their universe was far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying the authority of absolute command, I am Queen Zaralyn of the Nexari Empire. By now, your governments have received our warnings about the approaching threat. What you are about to witness is the return of an ancient enemy that has plagued our galaxy for millions of years. She gestured, and the tactical display showing the Devourer fleet appeared alongside her image. These machines have destroyed every previous galactic civilization that reached technological maturity. They harvest entire worlds, consuming everything from the planetary core to the orbital infrastructure. They have returned, as they return every 700,000 years, to begin the next extinction cycle. The communications boards lit up with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Panic, disbelief, demands for more information, offers of assistance from unexpected sources. But this time the Queen continued, they face something new. For the first time in galactic history, multiple civilizations have joined together not in conquest, but in mutual defense. Today, we discover whether cooperation can triumph over extinction. She closed the channel and turned to address the assembled military commanders. Representatives from 11 different species stood around the tactical table, many of them former enemies now united by necessity. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored others, the Queen said formally, welcome to the most important military operation in galactic history. Captain Chun, please brief everyone on our enemy's capabilities. Marcus activated the holographic projector, displaying theoretical models of Devourer technology based on archaeological evidence and computer simulations. Based on our analysis, each Devourer ship is essentially a mobile factory, he began. They strip mine planets and convert the raw materials into new ships, weapons, and infrastructure. Their smaller vessels are probably automated fighters designed to clear orbital defenses. The medium ships are likely processing vessels that handle planetary harvesting. And those massive contacts, those are the factory ships that coordinate the entire operation. Commander Sarah Chun of the human fleet, No relation to Marcus despite the shared surname. Leaned forward. What about their defensive capabilities? Unknown, but we have to assume they're formidable. Previous galactic civilizations had technology we can barely comprehend, and the Devourers eliminated them completely. Weapons? Asked the Zephyrian Admiral, her translator rendering her whistle-like speech into galactic standard. Again, unknown specifics, but the archaeological evidence suggests they can crack planets open like eggs when they want to. Their weapons are probably designed for industrial efficiency rather than military engagement, but that might actually make them more dangerous. Princess Kalawayan, who had been quietly observing from beside her mother's throne, suddenly spoke up. The crystal flowers are screaming. Every conversation in the chamber stopped. The young princess was pale, her crystalline growths flickering with distress colors that Marcus had never seen before. Kalawayan, what do you mean? Her mother asked gently. All across the planet, the crystal flowers are screaming warnings. They can feel the shadow eaters coming. They're terrified, mother. They remember what happened before. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, is it possible that your planet's ecosystem retains genetic memories from the last Devourer harvest? The crystal flowers are over 1 million years old, Valera said quietly. The oldest specimens have been growing continuously since before our civilization developed spaceflight. If they encountered Devourers before, they would remember the Queen finished, which means this planet has survived a previous harvest. How? Marcus asked. Unknown. But if Nexary Prime survived once, perhaps it can survive again. The tactical display chimed with an incoming priority message. Warsinger Thaneval approached the Queen with obvious urgency. Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Devourer vessel. It's addressed to all inhabited worlds in this sector. Put it through. The display shifted to show something that made everyone in the chamber step back involuntarily. The Devourer wasn't a ship in any recognizable sense. It was a massive geometric structure that seemed to bend space around itself. Crystalline growths covered its surface, but these crystals were dark, lifeless, designed purely for function rather than beauty. When the entity spoke, its voice was like the grinding of continental plates. Biological entities of the current cycle. It intoned, each word carrying the weight of eons. You have achieved sufficient technological development to warrant harvesting. Resistance is inefficient. Surrender your worlds, and your resources will be processed cleanly. Opposition will result in extended collection procedures. The transmission paused, and then something unexpected happened. The entity's attention seemed to focus specifically on the Nexary system. Planet designation, Nexary Prime. Warning. This world contains remnants of previous collection attempts. Local biological entities demonstrate anomalous resistance properties. Enhanced processing protocols authorized. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Enhanced processing protocols, Commander Chun said grimly. That doesn't sound good. Queen Zerlin's crystalline crown was now pulsing with deep red light, the color of absolute fury. They speak of my people as if we were livestock to be harvested, as if our children, our culture, our very existence means nothing more than raw materials for their factories. She turned to address the assembled commanders. I want every ship we have positioned between the Devourers and our inhabited worlds. I want our defensive networks operating at maximum capacity. And I want firing solutions calculated for every enemy vessel the moment they come into range. Your Majesty, the Voidwalker representative spoke for the first time, his words seeming to come from empty air. My people have analyzed the enemy formation. They're not approaching as conquerors. They're approaching as exterminators. Explain. Conquerors seek to preserve what they capture. Exterminators seek only to eliminate what opposes them. These entities show no interest in preserving our infrastructure, our populations, or even our planets. They intend to convert everything into more of themselves. Marcus studied the tactical display, noting the mechanical precision of the approaching fleet. That actually gives us an advantage. How? The Queen asked sharply. Because exterminators follow predictable patterns. They're optimized for efficiency, not creativity. If we can disrupt their operational procedures, force them to adapt to unexpected tactics, we might be able to exploit their inflexibility. What do you have in mind? Marcus activated the strategic planning interface, highlighting key positions throughout the system. We don't try to meet them head-on. That's what they're designed to counter. Instead, we use our diversity against their uniformity. Human ships focus on mobility and electronic warfare. Nexary forces use their superior firepower to create gaps in their formations. Zephyrian shields protect our support vessels, while Voidwalker phase ships strike from unexpected angles. The Queen studied the proposed formation. You're suggesting we fight like a pack rather than an army. Exactly. They're machines optimized for industrial processing. We're diverse species with different strengths, different technologies, different ways of thinking. Our greatest advantage isn't our firepower, it's our unpredictability. Princess Valera moved closer to the tactical display. Captain Chun, what about the crystal flower's memories? If our world survived before, there must be something specific about how we did it. Your Majesty, Marcus said urgently, I need to access your planet's oldest archaeological sites. If there's evidence of how Nexary Prime survived the previous harvest, it might be the key to surviving this one. The Queen was quiet for a moment, then nodded decisively. Warsinger Thaneval, escort Captain Chun to the ancient archives. Princess Valera, go with them. Your crystal sense might help interpret anything you find. What about the battle preparations? Marcus asked. We'll continue under my direct supervision. But, Captain, if there's something in our past that can save our future, we need to find it before those machines arrive. As Marcus left the strategic planning chamber with his escort, he looked back one last time at the tactical display. Over 300 Allied ships were moving into defensive positions throughout the system. It was the largest cooperative military effort in galactic history. He just hoped it would be enough. The ancient archives were located deep beneath the palace, in caverns that had been carved from living rock millions of years before the Nexary had developed space travel. The walls were covered with crystalline growths that pulsed with their own inner light, creating a natural illumination that seemed to respond to the presence of visitors. Princess Valera led them through corridors lined with stone tablets, crystal matrices, and artifacts that predated most galactic civilizations. Her crystal sense allowed her to navigate by following the emotional resonances left by ancient events. Here, she said finally, stopping before a massive wall covered in crystalline formations. The flowers are singing strongest here. Whatever happened, this is where it began. Marcus examined the crystals closely. They weren't decorative, they were some kind of recording medium, preserving information in patterns of light and energy that human technology could barely detect. Princess, can you interpret what they're showing? Valera placed her hands against the crystal surface and closed her eyes. For several minutes, she was completely still, her own crystalline growths pulsing in sync with the wall. Finally, she opened her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was filled with wonder and terror. I know how we survived, she whispered, and I know what we have to do.